Hey guys, welcome back to Living the Gandy Life. If this is your first video, my name is Faith and welcome. Today I'm going to be sharing with you what I have planned for our 5th grade curriculum choices for the 2020-2021 school year. So my 5th grader is actually my oldest. So everything that we're going to be going over today is new to him and it's new to me. The first thing I want to start off with is our math. And for math this year, we have Saxon 8-7, the homeschool edition. Now, if you've watched my previous videos before, you know that we use and like Saxon. It's not fancy and it's not colorful, but it's a good, solid math program. We have been using it with Gabriel since preschool, and we haven't had any issues with it. So as long as we have 0 issues, we're just going to go ahead and continue with it. Now, if you're wondering why I'm using Saxon 8-7. It's kind of a funny story. We had a little snafu last year, so to speak. It was my fault. So, with Saxon, you have Saxon K, 1, 2, 3, and then after Saxon 3, you actually start going into where it'll say Saxon Math 5-4, Saxon Math 6-5, Saxon Math 7-6, and they kind of overlap a little numbers. Like I said, it was 5-4, 6-5, 7-6, 8-7. I just learned that little tidbit that they overlap. When I initially was looking at the math curriculum last year, I just thought that it went 5-4, 7-6, 9-8, so to speak, and it doesn't. So as I'm going to buy the curriculum this year, I realized that last year when I put my son, who is in 4th grade, in Saxon Math 7-6, he actually should have been in 6-5. So we came to these crossroads where my husband and I were talking about it, and we were trying to figure out, okay, do we repeat the curriculum? Do we, go back and make sure that we didn't miss any concepts and purchase 6-5, the one that we missed? We had already purchased this one. So we thought about it and talked it over, and we decided that, he really is very strong in math. And so we decided that we are going to go ahead and go on with 8-7. With that said, though, we will be very cautious as we go. If we are moving too fast, if there are concepts that he does not understand, if it's just a little over his head, we have the freedom and the flexibility to pause, to go over a math lesson. If it takes us 2 days, 3 days, a week, whatever, we can spend the necessary time on it to make sure that we're understanding a concept before we move on. Now, if we need to do that, we will. If he's getting it, we'll just continue to move on at the speed in which he is requiring. If he's got it, we're just going to keep going. If not, we'll slow down. That's one of the beauties of homeschool. Go at the speed of your child. So as with every math book that I've showed you, this one is kind of set up like a textbook. You have some mental math problems where you're going to just be working on some, not relying on a pencil and paper. You're just going to be working on being able to do some of the things in your head. Then after you do that mental math, then you move on to the new concept for that day. So it is set up like a math textbook where you're going to go through. It's using examples to teach the concept. So a lot of times I'll cover up with my hand or a piece of paper and hide the solution as we're working through the problem. And so the new concept kind of goes, at least on this lesson 24, will go until this point. And again, it's got 4 examples to kind of show you the different ways of doing the problem and different examples for it. And then after you go through that new concept, it has lesson practice here at the bottom. And that lesson practice is merely having problems that are targeted to that new concept that you learned that day. And I usually will go over that with my kids just to make sure that they understand that new concept that we just went over. After you've done that lesson practice, then you have mixed practice, which is just strictly review from all the previous lessons. And it's kind of intermixed. It jumps all over the place. And then under each problem, it'll tell you what lesson it's referring to. So if you didn't understand it, a lot of times we will go back. Under that problem, you can see a little parentheses of the 12. And it'll tell me that was covered in lesson 12. So if we didn't know how to do that one, we would go back to lesson 12. And it usually has about 30 problems of mixed practice, and we won't do all of them. If we're on an even lesson, we'll do the evens. If we are on an odd lesson, we'll do the odds. We're not going to spend all of our time doing things if we understand them. So since that is set up like a textbook, we will use just a spiral bound notebook to write all of our problems in and do all the work in separate. He won't do any writing in this, and that way we can use it from year to year. Along with that though, you can purchase these practice sheets that they'll do each day. So these are math facts. Some are about proportions, some are about fractions. Let's see, we're learning how to do things with circles and just multiplication facts, just different things that they'll do one each day. And in the back, they'll have their tests that they'll have to do every so many lessons. All right, moving on to what we plan for language arts. So the first thing that we have is our student resource packet for our Institute for Excellence in Writing, or what you'll probably hear me refer to as IEW. And so we used this last year, and this is just the resource packet where we have our units outlined for what we're going to cover in each unit. We have a separate binder where we keep the papers that he generates with his writings, his outlines, anything that he is physically writing, we keep in a separate, since this is bound. But this is kind of the resource that we have, so to speak. Now, this last year was our first experience with IEW. I've mentioned before that we use Abeka up to 3rd grade, and in 4th grade we make a transfer, and this is what we moved to. And I cannot speak more highly of IEW. I love it. I really wish that I had been taught to write this way. I grew up really not liking to write so much, and it wasn't because I thought that I was horrible. It was that I took forever. I didn't know how to get my thoughts down on paper. It was just a challenge just to be able to get that first sentence. And I love the way that IEW breaks down the writing process into manageable chunks, so that when you're going to write a paper, whether it is a fiction or a nonfiction, a book report, a persuasive paper, whatever it is, it gives you a step-by-step approach to not feel completely overwhelmed with what you're going to write. And like I said, I wish I had been taught this way. It's just, I can't speak more highly about it. But we're really excited about it to be doing it. It's just a process that you can use with no matter how you're writing or what you're writing about. You can use this process for anything. So we've really appreciated that. Now, the other thing that we're using for our language arts, and this is our first year with this, as we've never done it before, is called, sorry, they're stuck together. All right, is Fix It Grammar. So this is the nose tree, and this is the student book. So it comes with a student book and then a teacher's manual. And with this book, it is broken down into just weekly assignments, where you're very much covering just, if you can see what you're covering here, there are 4 days, but you can see that the 4 days assignments are really manageable, right? They're not excessive. There's not a lot of stuff. On the other side, it's showing like what we're covering that day, so you can read this through with your kid, and then you're basically going to be applying it here. Again, I have not used this, so I cannot attest to how successful we will be with it yet. I can update you later on in the year. But from what I'm looking through and as I'm planning of how we're going to use it, I feel like it's going to be very manageable. It's not going to be over our heads or too much at one point, because we're just looking here at just 1 sentence a day. And from my understanding, what we're going to be doing is on day 1, we're going to be looking at, the bolded words or the vocabulary. So we're going to be defining those words into a notebook. And once we make any of the corrections that need to be made, whether it's end marks or finding the nouns and writing an N above any of the nouns in the sentences, or making sure that we indent, and then also noting any homophones. So those are the things that we're going to be covering this week. We will then rewrite day 1's sentence in our separate grammar notebook, while also defining any of the vocabulary words. The way that was described in the introduction was that it's to kind of approach these assignments as a game. Like, there are things that need to be corrected in here. Can you find them? And it's kind of a challenge to the child. Like, can you find all of the things that need to be corrected? So they said that kids kind of respond better that way when they think it's a challenge, a game. And so I can update you with that. Again, it's Fix It Grammar. It looks really cool, and it's also written, or it's highly recommended by Andrew Pudewa. And Andrew Pudewa is the creator of IEW. And so since I have found IEW to be just a really great program, I thought that we would go ahead and give this a try. All right, for our spelling, we are just going to be working with our spelling words from last year. So we got this spelling book from Abeka for 4th grade, and we didn't make it through. I think we might have, well, since the book is automatically opening to this page, I'm going to assume that we either left off with list 19 or 20. So we're probably going to be picking up in here. And since spelling is kind of a skill that we are constantly having to develop, even at my age, I still have to occasionally look up a difficult word and make sure that I'm spelling it correctly. Thank you, autocorrect, because sometimes I just can't remember if vacuum has 2 C's or 2 U's, whatever. Things like that. You know, spelling is just is something that you work on forever. And since we hadn't finished this book, I thought we would just go ahead and finish it before we moved on to level 5. Now, this is your more traditional approach. So we have a list of words and a list of some vocabulary words. And what we have done with this in the past is he has a notebook. This is from last year's. We're probably just going to continue on in it. But on day 1 and 2, he's just strictly writing those words, writing those vocab words. On day 3, I make him use each of these words in his own sentence. He does not particularly care for that day as much, but I want him to make sure that he understands the meaning of the word and be able to use it correctly in context. Then on the 4th day, I'll have him write the words one more time, and then there's usually some sort of activity at the bottom. Then obviously after we've done those 4 days, then on the 5th day we would have a spelling test. Now for reading, we really don't cover reading in any of those other subjects. So for this, what I have done is I'm in the midst of compiling a list of living books for my child to read that will pertain more to the history that we're learning with our classical education memory work. And so we are studying American history this year. So basically, I'm using a list from Sunlight. I've never ordered a complete Sunlight curriculum before, but I do really like their book recommendations. So what we have done is just kind of picked, and we're choosing a couple of books off of the Sunlight list that my son will be reading on his own. I have a couple of recommendations that I've already received. I haven't gotten all of them yet, but these are some of the books that we'll be reading. I love the idea of living books where we are learning about kids and people who have great character, who've made wise decisions, and getting to read those stories from a different perspective, but that are good quality classic books. So some of the books that we have The Sign of the Beaver, you know, The Courage of Sarah Noble, The Matchlock Gun, and The 100 Dresses. These are just 4 books that we have chosen so far. But yes, we will be including lots of books that are off those kinds of lists, but we're also going to be covering, you know, when my child comes to me with a book that is about something that interests him. Currently, as you'll see, are birds and cars at the moment. He loves nonfiction books, so he'll also be doing some of his own reading for his enjoyment that are, you know, his choices about birds and cars. All right, those are the things that my son will be tackling on his own independently. We will be having a morning basket time where we're covering things as a family. Included in those will be Bible time, science, history, art, poetry, things like that. We will be doing those as a family. And since my son is older, he is in the 5th grade, he will be required to keep some sort of journal where we are just going to record, document, have some sort of record of what we are learning about. So if we are reading a book about Abraham Lincoln, he might write or draw something about Abraham Lincoln from that day's reading. If we are reading and learning something about the human brain, he might draw or write about what we learned in about the human brain. So he's going to have some sort of journal where he's documenting that, but we're going to be doing the reading as a family. So this is really the first year where we are delving deeper into the science and history subjects. Up until now, we've really relied on our classical education memory work that we do at home. So I will keep you posted on how that's going. I also plan to make a video about our morning basket and what I plan to include in that. So be on the lookout for that video. In the meantime, if you have any questions, any comments, please post them below. I'll be happy to answer them for you. Until next time, guys, have a blessed day. All right, can you tell everyone your name?
Gabriel.
Okay, and how old are you, Gabriel?
10.
And what grade are you going into?
This.
All right. What is your favorite subject?
Birds.
Okay, beyond birds, what's your favorite subject?
Cars.
Okay, beyond cars, what's your favorite actual school subject?
Math.
Math. And are you excited for our next school year?
Kind of, not really.
Kind of, not really. That's better than a no, I guess, right?
Yeah.
All right, thanks. Writing curriculum.